public service. This is statewide. Hurricane Sandy had 2.1 million customers lose power with a restoration period of up to 21 days. Tropical Storm Lee, you have 68,000 outages with a restoration of up to 10 days. Irene, 1.1 outages with a restoration period up to 9 days. And the ice storm of 08, December 08, with 330,000 outages with a restoration up to 8 days. I should also say, since tonight this hearing involves in particular Dutchess, Ulster, Orange, and Sullivan counties, that after Storm Sandy, we had 35,000 outages in Dutchess. That's 25% of the customers. In Ulster, there were 34,000, approximately almost 35,000 outages, about 36% of customers. Orange County had 81,000 outages, about 54% of the customers. Sullivan County had 34,000, about 63%. Irene had similar numbers, actually. They were particularly higher in Ulster, where after Irene there were 63,000 outages, 66% of customers, whereas in Dutchess it was about 20,000, in Orange 34,000, and in Sullivan about 18,000. So those are the more particular numbers for the counties we're talking about tonight. The Moreland Commission on Utility Storm Preparation and Response, that's us, created pursuant to the Moreland Act, as Ms. Calcaterra mentioned. And our mandate is really twofold. One, to study, examine, investigate, and review in 3 areas: emergency preparedness and the response of the utilities. 2, the adequacy of the existing regulatory framework. And 3, the adequacy of existing oversight and enforcement. And second, our second mandate is to make recommendations to the governor and the legislature for reform. This is a summary of our investigation to date. We've sent subpoenas to 7 utilities and 40 letter requests seeking documents and information. We've received and reviewed tens of thousands of pages of documents. We've conducted over 30 witness interviews. Held tonight will be public hearing number 7, so 7 public hearings. And our work is obviously continuing and will include future hearings. I know we have at least another one coming up in a couple weeks in the North Country. The basic problem we've been looking at, and the root of, we believe, many of the problems, and this is really what Governor Cuomo has outlined a number of times, is that utility companies are what economists call natural monopolies. And the basic problem is the 6 utilities operating in New York, as well as LIPA, operate as natural monopolies in their own exclusive service areas with no risk of losing all or part of the territory they have because of fairly toothless government oversight. We made initial findings and recommendations to the governor right around the new year before his State of the State, and we've presented findings and recommendation in the main 3 areas we were asked to look at. One is how we strengthen our oversight of utilities. Second, are there ways to find efficiencies that help the energy programs and the agencies of the state focus more on their core mission by unifying state energy programs and policy. And third, of less concern tonight maybe, but on restructuring LIPA, which serves Long Island and the Rockaways. I'm now, at this point, we're getting into the Public Service Commission recommendations, and I want to turn it over to D.A. Rice, who has led, again, our investigation subcommittee.
Thank you, Chairman Luskin. So one of the mandates that we have is to look at the regulatory agencies and see if they are effective in policing the private utilities that serve so many New Yorkers. So what we have found is that the Public Service Commission, which oversees all private utilities throughout the state, lacks power and oversight. They are charged as a commission with overseeing New York utility companies, but they really, what our investigation has found is that they lack the kind of oversight they need to ensure high performance and full accountability. They have limited performance of required utility operational and management audits, scaled back reviews of rate requests and service delivery. There is a weak penalty authority in failing to deter poor utility service. And as we found looking into LIPA, one of the major problems there was the PSC does not regulate LIPA rates and services because they're not a private utility. One of our recommendations was the issue was authorizing PSC to impose administrative penalties for violations of its orders. Right now, at the present time, the maximum PSC fine is only $100,000 a day for all violations. Now, that might sounds like a hell of a lot of money to me as a regular citizen, but when you're talking about private utilities that make an awful lot of money, this is not a lot of money to impose as a fine. There's another requirement that the utilities must be found to have committed a knowing violation, which may be difficult to demonstrate and also further hamstrings the power of the PSC to regulate these private utilities. So the Commission recommended, and Governor Cuomo proposed in his State of the State and included it in his proposed budget, executive budget, first to increase penalties to ensure adequate deterrence. For example, we suggest the base penalty amount on 0.02% of gross revenue, which would equate to about $2 million per day for a Con Ed and about $750,000 a day for a National Grid. Now those are real dollars, and that money adds up. Lower the burden of proof to a reasonable business standard as opposed to having to prove a knowing violation. Grant the PSC explicit power to review fitness of utilities and give the state explicit authority to revoke the operating certificates which allow the private utilities to function throughout the state. We also need to strengthen the state oversight of utilities. Strengthen the PSC oversight and restore regular auditing of utilities, management, operations, and rate increase requests. In its present form, the PSC has made only minimal use of its authority to conduct operational and management audits, and that's for a whole host of reasons. So our commission recommended, and the governor again mentioned it in his State of the State and included it in his executive budget this year, to restore the management and operational audit unit of the PSC, to require management and operational audits on a 5-year cycle, require the PSC to mandate implementation of reasonable audit recommendations, and create a dedicated enforcement unit to help ensure utility compliance with laws, regulations, and orders, and which can be enforced through those increased penalties we just spoke about. Number 3, hire more trained staff at the Department of Public Service after years of reductions. We authorized the DPS to fill up to 524 full-time employees in their 2012-2013 budget authorization. An additional 16 employees, taking it from 508 to 524, could be deployed as follows, and this is the recommendation. 8 engineers in the Emergency Management Unit, which is responsible for the review and of compliance with utility emergency response plans, 6 auditors and engineers in a new management and operational audit unit, and 2 attorneys in the compliance unit, which is responsible for reviewing utility compliance with the laws, regulations, and orders. And again, the governor proposed in his State of the State and included in his executive budget that DPS will recruit and hire up to 524 full-time employee allotment to assist in implementation and enforcement of new mandates. This can't be underestimated. The bigger your staff is, the more effective you're going to be, and the utilities are going to understand and you see that as an important function of the regulatory agency. Number 4, unify management structure of DPS and NYSERDA. Right now, DPS and NYSERDA run competing and overlapping green energy programs, leading to confusion, duplication, and waste. This is what Regina referred to before in terms of duplication of efforts in these agencies. NYSERDA and DPS draft separate disaster response plans, for instance, with very little coordination. So the Commission's recommendation was to unify management and policy-making process of DPS and NYSERDA so you don't have this duplication of efforts and everyone is working on the same team. So our work is continuing. We're going to continue to look at LIPA and other utilities operating in New York. As Chairman Losky and Executive Director Calcaterra have said, there are going to be more public hearings in storm areas across the entire state. We are going to issue a final report with additional recommendations in the coming months, and we're going to continue to examine the overlap of services between NYSERDA and the PSC.
Okay, thank you very much, District Attorney. I did